Hey there, this is lesson number 5 in the Drawing is a Skill unit. We're talking about grid drawing and comparison. This is part 2, so make sure you've done part 1 first. As you remember, the concept in this lesson is grid drawing. This is the skill that we're focusing on. And in grid drawing, you create a grid over a reference photo. So you see these light lines here, photo here are the grid lines. And then you create the same grid on another surface, wherever you're going to be creating your artwork. Same proportion of grid lines is best so that you can use them to help you locate your drawing. So you're going to draw one square at a time onto your paper. So you locate where that square will be and you draw that square carefully. And the grid helps you to figure out where each part of the image belongs. So it takes the guesswork out of where does this go? The mindset for this lesson is always analyze your drawings by comparing size, space, and angles. So when we look at this face over here, you see that red line? That is an imaginary line. This is what you can do when you draw. I want you to think of imaginary lines. Where does this line up with this? So where does the pupil of the eye line up with? It lines up with the corner of the mouth. So it's a way of checking to see if your drawing is lining up with itself. Always ask yourself, how does this part relate to the other parts of the drawings? What is the relationship? What is the space between the drawings? The angles, the size of this shape compared to another shape. So for this exercise, we're going to continue on with grid drawing. You're going to choose a cartoon character, or you can use the singing bear, I'll show you in a second, and insert that picture into your reference photo slide. You're going to create a crosshair grid like we did for the last exercise, and you're going to use the table tool in Google Slides. You'll create the same grid in your sketchbook, and then use the dot-to-dot method to figure out where your lines belong in the grid. Okay, so what does this look like in the assignment? Well, in your assignment, you are going to have the singing bear cartoon character. So if you want to use that one, you can, or you can create your own character. You're going to be creating this grid on top of it. But let me get rid of that so I can show you how to do it. So in Google Slides, you'll go to Insert, go to Table, and then you're creating a crosshair grid. So it has 4 quadrants. You're going to highlight 4 squares or a 2x2 table, and that will come up with this. Now you'll have to resize it. But before we do that, I like to change it to a little bit of a darker line so it's easier to see. You can mess around with the thickness of the line if you want. So to resize it, you have to hover over the 3 dots on the top and the side, click and drag. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to center your character within the grid. So think about making a frame around the character. It should be pretty close to the character, so that you can use those grid lines to help you figure out where your drawing belongs. Then draw a similar proportion grid in your sketchbook. Now, if we had rulers available, I would say it would be good for you to measure out your grid to make sure that it's the same proportion. But since we're doing this without rulers this time around, don't worry about it. Try to sketch it in there as close as you can. You can see my grid is actually a little stretched out top to bottom. It's a little taller than it should be. If I compare it to the grid that's already on the bear, you can see it's closer to a square where mine looks like a rectangle, but that's okay. Let's see how it comes out. So don't forget, sketch your grid lines in lightly. They are guidelines. Okay, let's get started. So I choose a square to start with. And I find out where my first drawing line crosses over the grid. I put that mark in there, and now I start to build from there. I'm constantly checking back and forth between my drawing and the original image to see how far away lines are from each other, what angle lines are compared to other lines. And every time a drawing line crosses over the grid, it's really useful because it helps me to know that I'm in the right space. Now I might need to erase. I can already tell this drawing that I'm creating right now might be a little more smooshed than it should be. But let me speed things up a little bit for you so you can see the process that I went through in creating this drawing. This leg ends up being in the complete wrong place, so I go back later and I change it. See if you can notice that at the end of the drawing. Remember, sketch lightly to start so that you can change it if you need to. And stop every once in a while and take a look. Is the line that you're currently drawing in the right place when you compare it to the crosshair grid? If it's not, erase it and redraw it. No big deal. Once you get a little further along, you have most of your lines drawn in, then it's time to start darkening in the lines that you're sure of. Oh, see, that's where I changed the leg. So then you start to outline those lines that you're sure of, get rid of the lines that were just kind of sketched in that you don't need anymore. And then, of course, when you're done or when you're almost done, erase that grid so nobody knows what you had to go through to create your drawing. All right, so here we are, exercise 5A. Remember, you can choose your own cartoon character or you can use the singing bear if you want. Create that crosshair grid using the table in Google Slides. Create the same grid in your sketchbook and use that dot to dot method to figure out where your lines belong in the grid. Good luck. I can't wait to see what you create.